I have managed somehow, and maybe that's for the better, to block my video so you can't see me. But this is Mike Quillen in Stanton this morning, a member of the Stanton Club and the Foundation Grants Chair for the district. And we're happy to have, it looks like about 25 people right now. And we will get started with our webinar. I'd like to introduce our two panelists, and that is Diane Woodson, who you may see. You probably can see Diane.
We can see you too, Mike.
And oh, you can see me. Oh, okay. Well, I better behave then. Okay. So today, we are going to have our webinar, and Diane Woodson is going to present on district grants. And there is Jennifer Mead just in time. Jennifer is going to present on the stewardship, and I'll be presenting on global grants. I hope everyone can hear. And a couple of technical notes here. And by the way, let me introduce Diane and Jennifer a little more. Diane is the district grants chair, and Diane is a member of the Stanton Augusta Club. And it's pretty good to have as a district grants chair someone who has an MBA from Harvard Business School and someone who is a Jeopardy champion. So Diane knows stuff. She just knows lots of stuff, and that's great to have. And Jennifer is a member of the Scott County Club, and she's an elementary school teacher and principal. So as you can imagine, without even seeing you, she's going to know if you're behaving out there. So, so you can get your cup of coffee. Hope you have one, or a cup of tea. But Jennifer will know if you're misbehaving. So we're happy to be able to come together and to present to you today. The housekeeping, pretty simple. You should see a toolbar as an attendee, and it has several functions, but the only one we're going to use today is Q&A. And Q&A will allow you to type out a question at any time, which we will have the opportunity to see, and we will try at certain parts of the presentation to deal with those written questions. Then I would like to start here real quick with a poll to get some sense of how much experience everyone has had with webinars and with district or global grants. So I'm going to click on poll and see if everyone doesn't have a few questions to answer. So if you would, I'm going to launch that poll and allow you as participants to answer the questions that we're posing. Just 3 questions, and just jump in if you would and answer. And this will also enable us to see if everything's working right. And I'll give you another 20 seconds to answer. And this will be helpful. And Diane and Jennifer, do you see the results coming in?
I see the poll, but not the results.
Yeah, I see the poll, but no results.
Okay, well, it may show up here at the end. Another 10 seconds. Okay. I'm going to share the results and we'll get an idea of kind of experience, and this looks really good. We're glad to have so many who are here and maybe don't have a big background quite yet. Let's see. So if I'm not sure if it's showing up to the attendees, but so let me go through it right quick. The first question was, have you had primary responsibility for a district grant funded club or collaborative project? 40% have had experience with 1 to 3, 4% just one person, more than 3, and 56% of the attendees have not had primary responsibility for a district grant. I know many of you have been involved, if not most everyone has been involved in one, but the question was primary contact or primary responsibility. And this is very helpful. Have you had experience in the drafting of an application or carrying out a global grant project? And 44% have, which is good. That's great, in fact. And then, is this your first webinar? And we're split almost evenly with the 52% no, 48% this is your first grants webinar. And I know that some of you may have had club training, had live training, or viewed our past video or slideshow. But that's good. That's great to know. And it does look like our polling function works. So I'm going to stop that. And I am going to go ahead and turn the program over to Diane Woodson, who is going to carry you through district grants. And I am giving Diane control of the board.
I'm just going to make sure this works. Okay, oops, okay. Give me just a second here. Show ease on.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Good morning, everybody. The first thing I'd like to say has absolutely nothing to do with district grants, and then if you allow me this leeway, I promise I'll stay on track. You might not see my shirt very well, but I am wearing my Rotary Friendship Exchange shirt this morning because I had a fabulous experience with the exchange with Queensland, Australia, and that country is having so much trouble with fires right now. All I would ask is that people remember our Aussie friends. They went out of their way for us, and I will always have a fondness for them. So with that being said, I'll stay on track with district grants. The district grants section of the webinar is broken down into several subsections, and in the first section, I would like to talk about ideas for district grants. First of all, if you're new to district grants, what are they? They are humanitarian and service projects. They are either done by a single club, that's one project, one club, or a collaborative grant would be more than one club with one project. District grants are always started and completed within one Rotary year, and you all may recall that our Rotary fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th. So the district grants have to be started and completed within that cycle. And I'd like to give you an idea about the types of projects Rotary clubs do. And by far, the largest category is community development. That accounts for about half of the grants. And those would be construction and renovation, parks and recreation. A lot of things fall into that category. Education accounts for about a quarter of the grant projects, and those would be things like literacy projects. A number of people are doing technology, And I've seen now crop up some children's museums. Oops. An eighth of the projects are in the area of health, and those would be things like dental health and diabetes prevention. And the remaining eighth of the grants, and by the way, this is this year's statistics. This would be food and agriculture account for about an eighth of the projects. And I would say that that may be because District Governor Tim has a focus this year on hunger projects. So what goes into food and agriculture would be things like meal packaging events, nutrition, stocking food pantries. Oops. I wanted to show you a few pictures of grants and grant projects. And the first one is from the Forest Rotary Club. And this is actually a grant from last year. And I'm showing this in particular because we talk about district grants and global grants, but please know that district grants don't have to be just in your local community. They can have an international flavor. And the grant that's showing right now was for Burundi, Africa. And this was where women and girls in some countries are having to they may miss 4 or 5 days a month from school because there's a lack of hygiene products. And you can imagine the negative effect on learning if you're missing that much school. The Forest Rotary Club noticed this need, and they work to improve hygiene for girls and women in Burundi, Africa. So I always enjoy this picture because I like seeing the smiles on the faces of the beneficiaries and the Rotarians. To me, it's the same smile. Grant project from this year that I'm very proud of is from the Lynchburg Morning Club. And they actually organized a Rise Against Hunger project for their district governor visit. DG Tim is actually in the photo. And they packaged over 24,000 meals. And I am proud of all of our clubs that have district and collaborative grants, but I wanted to especially note for this club, this is the first district grant project they have had in probably more than 5 years, maybe even 10 years. So kudos to the Lynchburg Morning Club. And then I like to show this photo of the Stanton Rotary Club's Centennial Project. This is Mike Quillen's club. And Stanton is celebrating its centennial year with an Area 4 collaborative grant. This is the first time we have done an area-wide collaborative grant in Area 4. And I can't think of a better way to celebrate the centennial for Stanton, especially because Stanton is the ancestor of all of the clubs in Area 4 and probably ones beyond Area 4. But this is very exciting. Stanton is building a family pavilion in one of the parks, the city of Stanton. And the city of Stanton, they went to the city and the city said this is their #1 priority. So kudos to Stanton and Area 4. By the way, this club is 100 years young. I'm just excited that they're going strong after 100 years. Very vibrant club. Okay, I'd like to switch gears now and talk about district grants, of numbers with district grants. If you'll indulge me, I'm kind of a numbers nerd. So this year we awarded $104,000 in district grant matching funds, district and collaborative grants. That allowed for a total project funding of almost $300,000, over $291,000. And to give you a sneak peek at the upcoming fiscal year, we expect to have more grant funding, matching funds available, and we are looking at, we anticipate $110,000 available for the upcoming year. So that's always exciting when we can increase our funding. Give you a feel for participation throughout the district. We had 48 clubs involved. almost 7,000 volunteer hours, and over 137,000 people benefited, we estimated, benefited from the grants. Now, to give you a overview of how the matching funds work, if it's a single club grant, the maximum match is $4,000. For collaborative grants, 2 clubs can earn matching funds of up to $6,000, 3 clubs $9,000, and 4 or more clubs it's capped at $12,000. Now, please keep in mind a $12,000 matching grant is a $24,000 project. So I think all of us can imagine, get excited about thinking about what we can do with putting $24,000 investment into our communities. While I've talked about the maximums, I want to make sure folks know that there is no minimum, and there are many worthy projects that don't have a huge financial component. So if you have a grant idea and it's for several $100s, please go ahead and apply for it. There's a lot of visibility with grants, and I don't want anyone to feel bad if they don't have a large project. Where does the funding come from? All funding comes from donations to the Rotary Foundation Annual Fund. I always enjoy saying this because it gives me a chance to give a shout out to my good friend Dana Guthrie, who's the annual giving chair. Dana and her team of foundation advocates do a great job of keeping annual fund giving in front of us all year. So Dana and I are good friends because Dana likes to bring money in and I like to spend it, so we get along well. Mike, I'm seeming to have difficulty advancing my slide.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yes.
Let me see.
Okay.
Oh, somehow you've lost control. Let me try to give it back to you.
Okay.
No,
Well,
no, now it says you are.
okay,
You
thank
might
you
have to
very much.
click your mouse and see if you get it back.
It says I'm controlling. Okay.
Okay. There.
Okay, thank you.
You got it back.
Just a second. Okay. I'd like to switch gears again and talk about district grants in more detail. Basically, how do you learn more about district grants? Go back one slide. And the good first step is to get onto our district website, which is on this slide, www.rotary7570.org. What's important is that when you get on this website, please don't log in, because you just get on it and everything you need is right there. The What We Do tab is all things grants. So in that section, you will find guidelines, applications, templates. Templates are extremely important. If you are someone who hasn't entered a grant before, you cannot save your online, you can't put your online grant application partially in and save it. So what you do is you build it on the Word document template, and then you just copy and paste. Something else that's helpful you can see on under the What We Do tab is historical data. You can see the grants that have been entered for the last 5 years. And a good place to start is the guidelines, either district grant or collaborative. And if you click on once you're in the What We Do tab, if you click on the district grants application, and then you'll be able to click on district grant guidelines. When you bring up a document and you see purpose and funding at the top, that will tell you you're on the right page. By the way, all of this information will be saved as a PowerPoint and perhaps recorded as a video, so you don't have to remember all of this. Just remember there's a place you can go and find this information. Key dates for the upcoming fiscal year. You won't see that a lot has changed. The deadline for submitting applications is still May 31st. We plan to announce awards by July 7th. May seem like a long time in between, but the grants committee gets busy starting June the 1st with vetting applications, and then we have a number of folks who vote. I think it's about 9 people, grants committee members, the foundation, Rotary Foundation chair, the people in the DG string, everyone votes, and then we announce awards by July 7th. That also allows us time for Mike to get the grant application into the Rotary Foundation and hear back. We target funding. Our target funding date is August 1st. Progress reports are due January 31st. And just a quick shout out to folks who have grants for this year is your deadline for progress reports is coming up quickly in just a couple weeks. And then completing the project and submitting the final report, those are due May 15th. And when we get to the stewardship section, Jennifer Mead will talk more about progress and final reports. Grant terms and conditions, as we saw from the Forest Rotary Club's grants may be global in scope. We try not to repeat grant applications. That's a little bit of a gray area. We try not to have grant applications that are duplicates of ones from past years. And also when we evaluate the grants, we do look at a Rotary Club's history of contributions to the foundation. This is perhaps the most important section of the guidelines, and we call it the thou shalt nots. And there are 9 areas that grant funds may not be used for, and I'd like to go over those. Those are reimbursing existing projects. Your invoices that you submit have to be dated, they cannot be dated before July 1st, or they wouldn't be paid. Cannot use grant funds to purchase land or buildings. Cannot use funds for new construction or additions where people live or work. They cannot be used to fund salaries, stipends, or honorariums. To pay operating expenses of another organization, such as we can't pay someone's utilities. May not be used for personal or professional development. Establishing a permanent foundation. Travel expenses, or for the benefit of any Rotarian or relative of a Rotarian. Now, I want to be clear that having one of these categories in your budget doesn't disqualify your grant project. It simply means you may not use the district matching funds or the club funds that are being matched to pay for these. And this will become clear when we talk about the budget in a few minutes. We'll show you an example of a grant project with a thou shalt not and how you account for that. Grant certification, I call this my preaching to the choir slide because 46 people are on here today, and I imagine that might be because they would like to apply for a grant, either a district or global grant this year. But applying clubs are required to identify either a primary project contact or a financial contact who is grant certified. And how do you become grant certified? You either view this webinar or attend the live seminar, grants management seminar that we do as part of club team training. And that usually is on the same, that's connected in with the PETS training. So anyone attending today is grant certified for the grants that will be applied for this coming May. Now, I'd like to switch gears again and talk about the application itself, and we'll drill down into the details. Before doing that, I'd like to talk about, there are grant applications, and then there are some that are world-class or gold standard, and how I view these is I think about 3 I's. These are the characteristics. As first is impact. World-class grant application paints a clear picture of the need. if I remember the wording on the grant application exactly, it's how does the project benefit your community and improve the lives of the less fortunate? Remember that we are, we don't like to think of Rotary clubs competing, but when it comes to grant applications, usually we receive more requests for funding than we have funds. So remember that you need to sell your project. And this is one area is showing the impact. The second I is investment. Investment is financial investment. There's also an investment of time, of human resources. So we look at the return on investment. That doesn't necessarily mean the highest number of beneficiaries. There can be some qualitative aspects as well. And then inclusivity. It's particularly gratifying when you see an application which has kind of inclusivity between the people doing the grant and the ones being helped. And I wanted to call attention to Area 13's collaborative grant this year. I believe this is the first time Area 13 has done an area-wide collaborative grant. And they are doing a miracle field. It's a ball field. And they describe their project as having persons with this field will accommodate persons with disabilities, but they're not on a field all by themselves. They are buddied up with an able-bodied peer, so they can play ball side by side. So this was a really special grant application. So kudos to Area 13. Okay, to talk about some of the details. When you go in and pull up the Word document grant template, you'll see that you put on a project name. Remember, your start and end date have to be within the same Rotary fiscal year. You develop a budget. You describe your project. You estimate the volunteer hours. Describe the publicity plan. Sometimes we get so busy as Rotarians doing the work that we forget to publicize what we're doing, but that's very important. And indicate partners and cooperating organizations. That's something we like to see on a grant because it really shows involvement in your community. All right, Mike, I'm having trouble advancing again. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Well, I'm showing you as waiting to control the screen, so it might take another. There, you've got it back.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, wanted to show you two budget scenarios. The first is kind of a normal budget, and a couple things I'd like you to note is the budget is balanced. That means the total expenditures equal the total funding, and that is a must. That's one of the first things the Grants Committee checks when we look at grant applications. Please note how donated materials are handled. They are put into the expenditure side and the funding side. You'll see landscaping materials showing up and dumpster services on this project.
Diane?
Yes.
Let's see. Oh, you cover the way to handle the non-matched item.
I will in the next scenario.
Right.
Yes. I wanted to show you how you handle a budget when you have a thou shalt not in your grant. And in this particular grant, salary, this has a salary. It's showing as discounted dietitian wage. Salaries aren't covered. So what you see in this slide is you will see the wage, $1,750 in the white print under the expenditure budget, it's the fourth line. And then under the funding budget, this club elected to cover their thou shalt not with additional club funds. It doesn't necessarily have to be club funds, but it can be. So if you'll notice under the funding side, the club is putting in $1,750 plus the $2,075 that the district is funding. So that is how that accounts for that. Mike, does that answer your question?
Yes, that's it.
And remember, these will be available to you so you don't have to remember every line item. We talked about the importance of partners and cooperating organizations, and examples of who might be good partners are recipient organizations, of course, for collaborative grants, participating Rotary clubs, also Rotaract clubs, civic organizations, churches, Interact groups. It's great to get the Interact kids, students involved in this. Local government groups. We see many grant applications with Parks and Rec Department as a partner, and that's great. Okay, submitting the application online. After you have your template finished, I said cut and paste. Of course, you could copy and paste. Remember, the budget must be balanced, and if it seems that I'm nagging on this, I do understand that Rotarians are smart people and do well at math. This is where sometimes the budget becomes unbalanced, is when you're editing. It's very easy to miss something. So I would say when you're submitting your application online, check it one last time and make sure you have a balanced budget. Project authorization letter must be uploaded, and that needs to be signed by the appropriate people. Please note, for a collaborative grant, that each club president and area governor must sign those. Area governor doesn't have to sign a single club grant. This is the final section of the district grants section, and I would like to just cover some tips, and these are probably things we've learned the hard way. The first tip is to get started early and finish early. When we say get started early, what does that mean? Well, by the time your president-elect comes to PETS, he or she should have a good idea of what grant project your club plans to do, and plan to finish early. I've noticed that over the past few years, probably 90% of the grant applications come in the last few days. And if you can finish early, that really would take stress off you. Unfortunately, the grant application deadline of May 31st hits during a holiday week, during vacation season, and so plan to finish early, because it's always a good idea to get that done, and you can check that off. Some other tips: pay attention to the thou shalt nots. One of the areas the district grants committee vets the grant applications. That's one of the things we do check, is to make sure we're not funding thou shalt nots. Something I think is important, we had some issues with this last year, is please select a primary and a financial contact that will be present for the whole process and able. And by present, what I mean there is the grant application gets submitted by May 31st. Well, during the next 2 weeks, the district grants the grants committee will divide up the grants and vet them. And we really need, we may have questions, and we need someone who is available. Able, you don't have to be a Mike Quillen level tech wizard, but your person who's entering the grant does need to know how to navigate the grant application online and to copy and paste. One of the options that are open to Rotary clubs is you may submit, if you'd like a preliminary review by the grants committee, it's certainly not required, but it may be helpful. If you submit your template to us before May 15th, and at the last slide I'll show in this section will be the contact person by area, then we will give you some feedback. This doesn't mean your grant will be approved, but it's, if it's something you'd like to have, we're certainly happy to do that. And also plan for up to 48 hours for a response from the grants committee. This ties into the start early and finish early. So a number of people are able to do Rotary work during the day. Please keep in mind that we also have folks who are doctors, teachers, lawyers, people who are not at their computer and not able to do Rotary work during the day. So please allow, and that tends to be a time when the grants committee gets a lot of requests. So please Please be patient and allow time, and the Grants Committee is very happy to help you. And finally, tips after submission. After you submit your grant, the primary contact submits the grant, and then he or she will receive a confirmation, an email confirmation. If you do not receive that, please contact your Grants Committee person as soon as possible, because if there's a problem, grant may have to be re-entered, and you don't want to wait until all the funding has been distributed before letting us know we didn't get your application. It's a good idea to keep your template, your Word document on hand. If you have to re-enter the grant, it will be a lot easier if you have your template. And with all the, as hard as it is to do all this, you certainly don't want to get to the end and find out your grant didn't get entered. I'd like to close with a list of contacts, and we have added folks to the Grants Committee. So so now we are able to divide up the contact persons by areas. You can see that on your screen. And I think that is all I have, except Mike, can I go to the Q&A?
Sure, yes. I'm going to, in the meantime, take control back, or try to, of the screen.
Okay. I think someone asked if, let's see. Someone asked if we're muting all the attendees, and probably figured it out by now, but Mike, my sense is you're muting all the attendees, correct?
That's right. We're going to use the Q&A function if there are questions.
And I appreciate the consideration of persons making sure we don't have extraneous noises. Okay, here's a question. Just to be clear, club members can be grant certified by reviewing webinar slides. That is correct. We prefer for folks to, at least I will say, editorial opinion, I prefer for folks to either review or either attend the seminar live or the webinar, but yes, we are looking, we want to help people. We're not looking for ways to weed out people, the clubs applying for grants. We want to help people. So yes, you may become grant certified by reviewing the webinar slides if you can't do one of the two seminars.
And just as a note, we are recording, so the audio will be available along with the slides. And I'd say by the end of the month, we should have both the slides up on a link on the district website and instructions on going to the video, or the video and audio of the webinar. So look for that by the end of the month on the district website.
Yes, and I think, Mike, we usually put that under the grants, that what we do section, correct?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay. All right. Another question was asked, can we apply for 2 district grants in 1 Rotary year? Yes, you may. You can apply for a collaborative and a district grant, or you can apply for 2 single club grants. If you apply for 2 single club grants, you have to designate one as primary and one as secondary. And a question we had come up in prior years is, can you be part of 2 collaborative grants in 1 Rotary year? And the answer to that is no. Okay. For district grants done overseas, what special criteria will we need to have to ensure it compares against things locally? Involvement. This is, I would say that this is a case by case. And if someone has a district grants with an international component, that may be one you might want to submit to the Grants Committee ahead of time. I'll give you an example of involvement. The Forest Rotary Club, they had the Burundi grant. They assembled the products in the United States. So I think one thing I would say, it's always good if you're not sending funds overseas. If you can have a product, that's a good thing. But we'd be happy to handle to work with anyone one-on-one on that.
And one aspect, one additional requirement for a district grant project that has an overseas component is that we will require an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, either with an international Rotary club in the area where you want to carry out the project, or with a nonprofit that will be in effect administering the project. So we will need a separate memorandum of understanding for an international project. As to all the other district projects, there is the certification or the that's submitted with the president and president-elect is we consider a memorandum of understanding because it incorporates a certification that you're going to abide by the guidelines that we've established.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate your expanding on that. That was very, I'm glad that you brought that up.
Okay.
I have another question. May a club partner with a Christian school? And the answer is yes. Got kind words from someone. Appreciate that. Here's the question, and I don't know if folks can see the questions. Do we know what Nancy Whitlock's focus will be on during her year as governor? Mike, I don't know if you want to unmute Nancy.
I will unmute Nancy.
You don't mind?
Yeah, I'll try to. Let's see. Yes. Nancy,
okay, I see that. I'm happy to answer that question. As always, there will be a smorgasbord of projects available. I know that there will still be folks out there who will be interested in supporting cart and wheelchairs. I have promised District Governor Tim that we will continue his hunger initiative, but at district team training and pets, I'm going to be rolling out I suppose I'd call it my initiative for Polio Plus. I have always been frustrated by the fact that the general public and the world at large does not understand how much Rotary has done for polio. So instead of Pints for Polio and smaller things, we are going to step it up a couple of notches and really make these community or area-wide projects. We are going to get the word out. This will be something that will certainly involve public image, certainly involve foundation, and as a result should be a real boost for membership. You know what, I'll just say that for right now because there are certainly more details involved, but I hope that is helpful. But if anybody has a question, either email me or, because I know probably Diane and Mike don't have a lot of spare time here to talk about my coming year, but the word will be out very shortly about my hopes and dreams for Polio Plus. I hope that's helpful.
Great, Nancy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy.
You're so welcome.
Here's another question for collaborative grants. Does a second club have to be a Rotary club? And the other clubs have to be a Rotary club or a Rotaract. An Interact club is not considered a collaborating club, and it cannot be an organization outside Rotary. Those would be partners in cooperating organizations.
And that even includes for the collaborative, the funding. They will be I think I'm right, Diane. You correct me if I'm wrong, but if a Rotaract club does help fund a district grant, the district will match it if the grant application's approved.
That's correct. Mike, can you see the questions, Mike?
You know, I didn't go to them. I'm sure I can. Let me see.
Okay, well,
let me go to them. Yeah.
I thought you might want to have input on this next one.
Okay.
It's about global grants and district grants.
Okay, collaborating with other clubs on a global grant is independent. The question is, my understanding is that collaborating with other clubs on a global grant is independent from the district grant process. Is that correct? Can we participate with other clubs in a global grant and also submit primary and secondary district grants? And the yes is the answer to both questions. Yes, collaborating on a global grant project with other clubs is independent of the district grant process. And if a club is involved with participating in a global grant, you can also submit a district grant primary and even secondary project application. Hope that answers that.
Okay. I would like to make a comment on primary and secondary grants, and certainly, as we've said, clubs may enter two of them. I would say that if we are in a funding crunch, secondary grants probably would be the first that are eliminated. So it's very important for clubs to give careful thought as to which grant application is designated primary and secondary. Mike, would you agree with that?
Yes, yes, that's fine. All right.
Someone is asking how soon to contact the grant committee if they don't receive the confirmation that the grant was entered. I would say the next day. And particularly if you enter yours on May 31st, June the 1st, I would be contacting someone. I have a request for Nancy's email address.
I'm going to unmute Nancy again. I'll catch her by surprise here.
Okie dokie. That was my email address.
Yes.
Okay. It is nwhitk@ntelos.net. As you might notice, I am missing the O in Whitlock. Long story there, but in Whitlock at intelos.net, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions. Thanks a bunch.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy. Okay.
I think we have
We've
answered all of the, and I wanted to tell the attendees, I really appreciate all the questions. It's a little different doing the webinar because you can't see people's faces and you're really wondering if you're hitting the mark, and really appreciate your engagement. You're taking the time out of your busy schedules this morning and the questions. So,
great. Yeah, great questions. And just for everyone's information, it's showing that we have 44 participants this morning, which is great. That's really good.
Mike, I am finished with district grants, and I'm happy to turn the meeting over to you to cover global grants.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, a couple of other questions of compliments to Diane. That's what the comment.
How nice.
So that's great.
Thanks very much for the kind words.